Live and local. Prepare your brain for an imminent upload because news, analysis, and opinion is on the launch pad.
I love that you offer different opinions.
Great topic, so positive.
Strap in for the truth warrior and woke destroyer. This is the Randy Tobler Show.
Even we're not sure what's about to happen.
Now, here's Randy Tobler.
Welcome to the second hour of the Tobler Show as we wind down a busy week. And it seems like our lives are getting busier, more anxious, more struggles, more stress. And who better to help us cope with that and I think fill in some gaps, some missing things going on in our world, and that is Teresa Lusk, who's a Christian counselor and host of the Teresa Lusk Show. Good to make acquaintance for the first time with you. Thanks for being on, Teresa.
Hey, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Hey, you know, I was talking with my wife the other day. She was doing her Bible study, and she said, you know, she walked out of the living room, and she said, you know, we've got to learn to be a little more gracious in this country. We're just not forgiving enough. And I said, yeah, there's a lot of those basic Judeo-Christian values that have just dissipated in our society. And it seems like it's accelerating the erosion of those kind of virtues, no?
Absolutely. And I think your wife is 100% correct. And so are you in saying that. I think that we've taken God out of the picture in our country, or many have tried, I should say. And it's affecting mental health. It's affecting your emotional well-being. And we're seeing that today. We're seeing it. Even people who, they don't realize their absolute need for God and for things that help you be graceful and help you be forgiving. So absolutely.
You know, you mentioned the need for God, and I think we are at a point in this country where true believers, authentic believers, may be outnumbered by those who aren't. There are many who are nominal Christians. I mean, just look at the difference in attendance between Easter service and the rest, or Christmas service and the rest at Christian churches, for instance. And I think there are a lot of people of the Jewish faith who are more cultural Jews than they are religious. I've been told that by Jewish friends of mine. And then at the same time, we hear Elon Musk, you know, and others talking about AI, and some of them, not Elon, but others have said they are intending to build a God. But a God a God of AI doesn't have a soul, and we do. And I'm just concerned at where we're going in this country with the loss of the need to really have a respect and a humbling honor of a higher being in our life. It's all about us anymore, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And, you know, it's really sad to hear that they're going to create their own God. But, you know, the good news is that we have the blueprint for how that looks from the Bible, right? Because there's nothing different. The only difference is they're using a different system to create it today. And we all know how that looks for them. And, you know, the truth is that people have become colder. And the Bible actually speaks of that people will become colder and they will have to push away God. They have to, because to be able to live in the kind of world that they're creating along with the God that they're creating. And to be honest, some people are creating a God and they don't even realize it. They're you know, hanging on to things that make them feel good versus what is right, what is good, what was from the foundations of the earth that will help me live out my life through the image of God, which is to be loving, to be graceful, to be forgiving, to actually, and to have peace. Can we just talk about that? You know, we look at the people today, everybody, or so many people, I should say, are lacking peace, and yet they don't understand they've pushed away the God that gives them peace. And so their behavior is a natural consequence of pushing away truth, of pushing away goodness, of pushing away those things, and it's affecting our homes. I mean, you look at the families, our families are being affected. We're pushing away the fathers when really we need the fathers more than ever today. So we are kind of in a hard place. But like you said, they're still believers, thank God, genuine believers. And those are the ones that are having to rise up and pray and hold on to some hope and some faith for the rest of the country. You
know, I've been reading your biography, and we're talking with Teresa Lusk. And Lusk, a host of the Teresa Lusk Show. And you are a life coach. You're a Christian counselor. You have a master's in professional counseling. You've had some speed bumps in your own life, starting very young, haven't you?
Yes, I actually have.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about that and how that affects when you deal with people who inevitably, by nature of the human condition, will have speed bumps. Sometimes they're Himalayan mountains, not just speed bumps to crawl over. Tell us about your story and how that influences your coaching.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. I actually, as a young girl, I had experiences of sexual abuse, and that really formed my thinking. It formed my identity in many ways of just not loving myself, not seeing my value, things of that nature. I ended up having my first child at the age of 14, actually. I dropped out of school in the 8th grade. And then I lived a very out of control life for years. And eventually I got tired of it. And I actually walked into some dark religious practices, believe it or not. And I ended up, with time, I moved away. I'm a Dallas girl, born and raised. I moved north of Dallas and started rebuilding my life. And out of desperation and need, because I hit a bump, I hit a place where I'm now a mom, and I'm trying to make, good choices with my first child that I had, and I'm trying to make good choices for him, and I'm realizing how broken I really am and how many mistakes I've made. And so I got a little desperate, started looking for some counseling, but I ended up can't even remember the reason for it, but I ended up finding some prayer online, and this pastor emails me back and gets on the phone with me eventually, prays with me. I ended up at his church, ended up giving my life to Christ within about a month after that. And, my whole world changed. It didn't get perfect, but it changed. There were so many things that were suddenly redeemed. There was so much brokenness that in that moment I was able to be set free from it. And there were some things I still had to heal through, don't get me wrong, but a whole world of brokenness from my past had been suddenly, supernaturally really healed. But then I continued the process of my own, because you can't go through what I went through. I mean, I went through years of really self-violating in so many ways, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, bad relationships, things of that nature. You can't do that and not need some soul healing. So I continued my journey, but in the midst of that, I actually got called into ministry. I'm actually a minister as well. And so I have just been able to lean on the Lord, and it's not been easy, but there's been some great, great, great things that have happened that you can say only through God could this have happened. There's no way you can take an 8th grade dropout and cause me to have a master's degree. I chose not to pursue the state licensing and all that stuff for obvious reasons, actually, that the way that the state wants.
Yeah, you don't want to go there. That ties you down. That constricts you. Yeah.
Right. So I want to be able to say what I need to say if people need healing,
Right.
And so, but it's been such a great experience to watch my life be redeemed step by step and season by season.
You mentioned we're talking with Teresa Lusk, and we're talking about some of the values and behavioral virtues that I think attend a faithful person, a faithful life. And like you said, it's not like you suddenly get it when it comes to the Christian message, but life is rainbows and unicorns, right? That's not it. But you do have, as you mentioned earlier in our talk, the peace. You have peace knowing that things are going to be okay. You got someone much more powerful than you that's got your back, right? And you realize you said also that you admitted that you were a broken person, right? And I don't see a lot of humility in the world anymore. I see people with a lot of bravado, people trying to blame others when they should be looking inward first. Not that there isn't blame when someone has wronged you or someone has clearly done something evil, obviously, but you get what I'm getting at. And I think that it's how, if you don't realize your own brokenness, how in the world can you forgive? And how can you show gratitude?
Absolutely. But see, if you humble yourself, then you have to deny yourself. And that's a problem with our world. Is to be humble means we have to deny ourselves. We have to deny the inward focus, the pity party, the blaming everybody. You have to, because humility is full surrender, and you cannot exchange. You can't have one without exchanging the other. It just doesn't work that way. So we're living in a world that's very cold. I do think that a lot of what's happened is the family has stopped training the children in the ways of God, in that it's okay. A lot of the things that I hear from people actually is, well, I'm going to teach my kids a few options and then they can choose. And that's dangerous for our society to say, well, I'm just going to pick and choose from this box of spiritual beliefs, and let's just see what happens. I mean, if just meditation, simple meditation alone, excluding God, right? All you're doing is centering your mind, really. If that's what I mean by that meditation. That's enough for my kids, then that's good for them. And that's dangerous for the family, because you see the brokenness being passed on from generation to generation. And then you throw on the social media effect of how easy it is to become the worst part of you through social media, because even though we say social media, we have to remember there are people behind the phone typing up these things that we call social media. So it's still led by broken humanity. And so it is definitely something that I wish we could do. But here's the real deal. We can say this all day long, but at the end of the day, it is this. Without the power of God, you cannot humble yourself.
Yeah. Well, that says it. I got to ask your feelings on the whole transgender issue. Having been a victim of sexual depravity with sexual abuse in your youth, I think that what we're doing to our children and what we're allowing others to say and teach and validate in our children's, which is a natural thing of children, to have a confused mind. Where am I? Who am I? What's it all about? Are you worried about the whole transgender movement and particularly teaching, not just teaching that we need to be tolerant and respectful in terms of the humanity of every person, but now it's gone on to where we're being asked to accept in our schools, in our workplaces, not only to accept, but to celebrate, to worship, to actually adopt that as a lifestyle. How do you deal with that in your counseling?
I'm extremely concerned about it because I watch the parents, and it started off actually with the LGBT movement, where parents, even Christian parents, by the way, when they have a child who says, well, I am not, I'm gay, I'm whatever, the same parents that had the strong conviction of, well, that's not how God made you, suddenly they have a change in theology and conviction. And so it started there. So now that it's become, very permissible, now we can move on to the next level, which is, this transgender movement. And you already know that the next movement is pedophilia, that's already the entrance of it. Like, that's already functioning in that manner. Now we're going to eventually, make it even more legal.
Yeah.
And so it's absolutely concerning. But here's what really concerns me the most is the parents are the ones that are okay with it. They're not rising up to say, guys, this is not okay. You can love somebody, but you still have to hold to your convictions. Once again, it starts in the home. Mm-hmm. And that's what concerns me the most. Because here's the thing. If parents were awake and they would see this, more parents would be at the school saying, absolutely not. You will not teach my child this. You will not do this, that, and the other. But it's not happening, where they're just kind of going with the flow. And that, again, comes from not having a foundation in God, a true foundation in God. Because like you said earlier, there are a lot of people who, quote, confess to be true believers, true Christians. When you are a true believer, the Spirit of God and the Word of God will lead you into righteousness, which means even though you're not going to be hateful to somebody, you're also not going to just say, but this is okay. I can still care for somebody deeply and not be okay with their choice. It's possible. Yeah. I have had to do it myself with people that I love. I still love them. And I tell people this: love wins when freedom comes.
Yep.
It doesn't just win.
Yeah. That's well said. No, I was talking with our morning host Brandon Rathert just yesterday morning about this issue, and I think it was yesterday, yeah. And there's this notion that us Christians are hateful. We want to see, we hate No, we actually love them and we worry about them because they're not in a place where their Creator would like them to be. You can love the sinner but hate the sin, right? And that's, I think, where we need to stand on these kinds of things, because now people like you and me and many people listening to us, say that we're just intolerant folks that just want to see the other people eliminated, like it's Nazi version 2.0. Nothing could be further from the truth. They don't call gender dysphoria and its follow-up, a mental illness for nothing. Hey, this is the Doctor's In segment that I have you on today. We talk about, topics that affect our health and wellness, and I believe that our psychological health vis-a-vis what's going on in our culture is absolutely what we need to talk about in a segment like this. We take calls, too. Would you take a call, Teresa?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. Let's talk to Greg, who's on with Teresa Lusk, Christian counselor and life coach. Go ahead, Greg. You're on with Teresa.
Hey, Teresa and Randy. I just had a good friend of mine. I was talking to him today. He's probably in his late 50s. His son has came out and said that he's gay, and that's been a few years back, and now he's going to be married to a man. And so, this guy, and I heard you mention something about strong convictions, and then if you did have them, then sometimes you get weak. And he's just in a situation bad. I mean, should he be okay with this? Or, I mean, he's not okay with it, and he's really struggling. His wife is kind of like, hey, you need to, be accepting, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Greg, why don't we...
it's going to be suggestions?
Well, one thing we can't do is diagnose and treat specific things on the phone, but what we can do is say, look, there are parents that are struggling with kids that used to be coming out as gay. Now they're coming out as I want puberty blockers and my breast cut off if I'm a young, 11-year-old adolescent, girl.
How do you keep your strong convictions?
Right. So the question is, Teresa, how does a parent or parents cope with this? People who are influential in these young people's lives, because you can sometimes, I've seen it personally go. Thanks for the call, Greg. Teresa, I've seen it go to where people put their feet in the sand, they denigrate their child, and they lose them. They're lost, and they've lost all contact. So that I don't think is the way to go. Any advice in general for parents coping with what is now an epidemic of behavioral problems among our children?
Yeah, I mean, I would never, push my child away for that. Would it break my heart? Absolutely. But at the same time, that's my child, and God still gave me that child. And so, number one, I've heard stories of people kicking out their children, and it breaks my heart. That's not what we want to do. However, if you see marriage, which if you're a true believer, you will see marriage. It is a covenant. It's a big deal in God's eyes. And so to witness a marriage, and when people show up to the wedding, they're there because they're going to witness a God covenant, a covenant between woman, man, and God. And if showing up says, I'm here to testify that I'm good with this, which is why it's such a big deal that when it comes to a marriage, hear what I'm saying. I'm not talking about a relationship. I'm not condoning the relationship, but I'm saying that there's a difference when you are talking about a marriage, which is something sacred. Yep. There is where a parent can, if this is their conviction, to say, listen, I love you, and I am going to always disagree with this choice, but I'm not going to reject you. However, when it comes to a marriage, I cannot be there and witness and say, I am good with this. I give it my blessing. So there's where you can draw the line. Now, it could cause a lot of problems. So, but I know that there are Christians who actually folded over and they said, well, I love them, and I get it. But for me, I will have to give an account to God one day, and I have to give it to Him. So that's my conviction, and that's how strong it is. And some people, I believe God speaks, and if for some reason I don't know, but that's how people can deal with their conviction of a marriage ceremony.
Yeah, in other words, recognize and that while we have differences, I'm not going to abandon you, but there's a line over which I will not pass and cross, right?
Correct.
And if that's what's funny about the folks on the other side of these discussions, why can't you just respect my feelings? Why can't you respect my stand? Well, wait a minute. Why don't you respect mine? Isn't respect a two-way street here?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, well, Teresa, thanks so much for being with me. Your website, in case folks want to follow you and learn more about the work you're doing.
Sure, teresaluskshow.com.
All right. And I hope you'll join us again for our Doctors In segment. We'll do this from time to time, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Would love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Teresa. There she is. All right. Teresa Lusk.